Well, hello, I'm Nathan Judo. I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Liam Keane. Liam, it's 12:38 on Tuesday, the 8th of August. We're supposed to be right in the middle of the Wolves podcast. We are not. There has been a delay. I think people will understand what that delay is. Look, less than a week to go before Manchester United, and it looks at this moment that Wolves will not have Julen Lopetegui in that dugout at Old Trafford. What's the latest, please?
At this moment, it certainly does look that way. I think as we speak right now, as you say it, almost 20 to 1 in the afternoon, he's at Compton. He's having talks. The latest is that they are discussing some sort of financial package for him to leave. And if they can find a resolution there, the likelihood is at this stage that he will depart Wolves at this stage. So the reason really why they're having to find a financial package or an agreement, however you want to phrase it, is that he's on really, really high wages at Wolves. So his backroom team. He so far has been reluctant to walk away. I think with his rhetoric and the way he's conducted himself in the last few months and how unhappy he's been with the lack of spending, he probably would have walked already had it not been for the inflated wages he was on from when he arrived at Wolves. Of course, he's also got his backroom team that are relying on him. If he walks away, they all walk away. They all lose out on the money as well. So he's been very reluctant to do that. The club, with the financial position they're in, have been very reluctant to sack him because it would be very expensive to do so. It's almost come to a head now between the two parties where he's been very critical publicly and privately of where Wolves are. There's only so much a club can do to put up with that, or only so much a club can take. It comes a point where it's going to affect the squad, affect the players, affect Wolves' start to the season potentially. And Wolves in the background have been working on replacements, working on targets in case Lopetegui does leave. And as it stands right now, he's in talks to finalise a package. And if they find a resolution, he will leave.
I mean, what a mess, Liam. It's an absolute mess. This has been really from the back end of last season when he voiced his concerns throughout the summer. There was almost a confirmation from Wolves early on in the summer that they'd at least found a bit of a resolution or a common ground, that he was fully behind the project going forward. And then we get into pre-season, those same old grievances come up. We've been with them in Portugal, with them in Dublin. Anyone who's speaking to him, he's very outspoken. But this is dreadful timing, Liam. I mean, absolutely awful time. We'll come on to replacements in a minute, but to potentially leave the football club less than high and dry a little bit a week before the season, on the back of Jeff Shee coming out with this letter last week, where he praised Julen Lopetegui and get behind the team and get behind the staff, and they've done a great job. There was no, I guess, description that there could be parting terms imminently. So this really is a mess, and it's a bad look, isn't it, from the fans' point of view, from the outside looking in? It's not great.
No, it's been handled really poorly, I think, in part on both sides as well, because Wolves, of course, have made mistakes. The fact that the miscommunication, the financial position, not necessarily a mistake in the sense that they're in this position, albeit there's a lot of transfers you can go back and look at and say they didn't work and they were big money. But the fact that perhaps it wasn't communicated properly, perhaps the forecasts weren't communicated properly, and Lopetegui found himself expecting something, plan A, got himself plan B. He's now looking at plan C or below or whatever it might be, and he's not happy with that. I can give Wolves the smallest bit of credit in the sense that they've had to work behind the scenes on finding something swift for when Lopetegui does leave. And unfortunately, the manager, as brilliant as he's been for Wolves, he's behaved quite poorly over the last few months, particularly last few weeks, to be more specific. And it comes to a point where is that going to drag on and affect the squad? And Wolves are going to make some sort of decision. And it looks, as it stands, that it's coming to a head in that regard.
Do you feel that there was maybe a standoff there between Fosu and Jeff and Lopetegui, where both sides probably thought that each one would budge a little bit on their demands and what they were thinking. And maybe Lopetegui, if he expressed his concern and his frustrations early on into pre-season, that maybe there could have been some money there. Maybe he could have got his way over a few signings, get them over the line. And Fosun have kind of stood firm, and it's almost the first to blink, and it looks like it's Lopetegui.
No, I think that's a really, really good point, because what do all managers, but in particular the top managers, what do? You look at a Pep, a Guardiola, a Tuchel, a Conte, a Mourinho. What do they? And of course, Lopetegui hasn't won the same trophies as them, but he's a very highly regarded coach, arguably the highest profile coach Wolves have ever had, or certainly in a very long time. And what do those managers all have in common? Sometimes they can be difficult characters, and they are very demanding, whether that is on a football side of things or a business side of things. Lopetegui's ambitious. He was demanding of what he wanted financially, and wanted to take Wolves this season. He wasn't going to get that, or he felt he wasn't going to get that, and he put the pressure on. He did it in May. He did it through into June. He did it during the off season. He did it again and during pre-season. And of course, when things changed, he doubled down on it again. That's what the top managers do, and that's how they win trophies and do so well in their careers. But Wolves at this point are just not going to budge as it stands. We've spoken about whether they'll take a risk and breach FFP and go for it if they lose the first 3 games, and by the end of August, everything will have changed. I think it's unlikely, but there was always that possibility. If they're going to make this change now and let Lopetegui go, it feels to me like that is almost impossible to happen, because you'd expect they would just do it now. So I think it's a very good point from you. It's the first one to blink. Lopetegui was, I expect, banking on Fosun to give in. They haven't. It's got to a situation where, albeit I'm told the talks are amicable, and he's going to, if he does leave on fairly good terms. There's only so long a manager can criticise the club and the owners and the board and get away with it without losing his job. Of course, the financial things we've already discussed was a massive part of it, but it looks now like it's coming to a head. And just on terms of him going, look, I do think this squad is in a better place now than we probably thought it was going into maybe July, going into pre-season. And I do think the starting 11 is decent. They do need additions. I still stand by that. They need a couple of maybe starters, a few players for depth. They absolutely need a little bit of strengthening. Whether that happens or not is one thing. Lopetegui leaving, I think, as the caliber and quality of manager he is, can only be a massive blow to Wolves. Slightly less concerned about him going now with where the squad is in comparison to maybe June when we analysed the squad and spoke about it. But it still can only be nothing but a blow, because a manager of his quality, if you can keep hold of them, you do not let a manager like that go. And they're taking a massive risk by allowing him to move on and bringing someone else in.
Yeah, and look, you're bringing that person in. Gary O'Neill is the person in the frame. He's the one that everyone's talking about, and it looks like he's going to be the one who's going to get the opportunity if and when it's offered to him. Spoken already. They've got a shortlist together. Gary O'Neill was at the top of that shortlist, and I mean, a fantastic opportunity for him. Look, did wonders, absolute wonders. And I've tweeted on social media many times last season about that. I think he was up there for manager of the season. Bizarre situation, really, with when he left on strange terms at the beginning of this season, I guess. And look, it's not going to be. It's definitely not a sexy appointment when you're going from someone, a former Real Madrid manager and Spain manager to Gary O'Neill. You can understand the frustration. What I would say, Liam, is that if he was inheriting a squad maybe last year with some bigger personalities, with some older personalities where you have to demand that respect, it might be a little bit more difficult. But as we've seen from the squad and the way that they are at this moment in time, it's actually a good group to get hold of. What do you think of the appointment? Do you feel that it's a smart appointment? A lot of people say it's a cost-cutting appointment from Lopetegui to Gary O'Neill. Where do you stand in if and when he will be appointed as the next manager of Wolverhampton Wanderers?
Yeah, if and when being a very important wording from you there, because of course still got to wait for the resolution, if there is any, with Julen Lopetegui. But yeah, Gary O'Neill is the front runner. Wolves have spoken to him. If and when Lopetegui leaves, they're in a position to appoint him quite quickly as it stands. So I would expect that, as I say, if and when he does go, that this will happen fairly swift. And look, he's a manager that is very inexperienced in the grand scheme of things. Of course, as a player and as a coach, and of course, Bournemouth last year, he has experience at top level football. But as a head coach in its own right, he's inexperienced. That's without a doubt. What he is, which I don't think a lot of fans realise, is he's quite well respected amongst the football community, amongst coaches, amongst managers. But you have to try and garner some of that support from fans. And that's going to be a really difficult task for him coming into Wolves at the beginning. And that, for me, is his first task. You come in, you say the right things, you do the right things, you get the fans on board. I think you're right with the squad. I think he'll get the squad on board a lot easier than he would have done with the previous group. There's a lot of players in this team, which Wolves have done, over the last 2 windows, worked quite hard on bringing players in, or particularly last window, actually, in all fairness, bringing players in that want to play for Wolves, want to be here, want to fight for the badge. They've got that in spades at Wolves now, and that will only help Gary O'Neill if and when he arrives at Wolves, but he has to get the fans on board as soon as possible. And you're completely right, regardless of the fact that he's respected in the football community, everything I'm told from people who have worked around him, know other people that have worked around him, whether it be on a playing side of things or a coaching side of things, has a lot of very good things to say and quite astute, quite intelligent. But the experience is a massive thing. And as you say, being a sexy appointment, being an appointment that brings people, puts bums on seats, brings people to Molineux, backs the team for a difficult start to the season, it's a risk. It can only be described as a risk. In time, in hindsight, we will know whether it's been a calculated risk, whether it was, in hindsight, a brilliant move. He did excellent things at Bournemouth, but regardless of that, it can only be a risk when you're letting a manager of Lopetegui's experience go and bringing Gary O'Neill's experience in.
Thank you very much, Liam. Of course, this is going to be moving very, very quickly. So we thought we'd get a quick video to you. It could change in an hour. It could be 24 hours. Could be 48 hours. Yeah. We don't know. Who's going to be the dugout at Manchester United? Is it going to be Julen Lopetegui? Is it going to be Gary O'Neill? Is it going to be Neil Cutler and Steve Davis? We don't know. All I know, Liam, is that me and you will be there at Old Trafford. That's the most important thing. Keep with us at expressthestar.com for all the latest. Of course, follow Liam as well. Follow myself, and the Wolves Poddy will be out in due course. Thank you very much.